Hello, loves. This is Marcus Stewart, and welcome to Call It in the Ring, a wrestling recap and discussion show of all things WWE. And no, this is not a recap of NXT UK, but tonight's Monday Night Raw took place in Manchester, England, in front of a sold-out crowd, probably. Okay, I'm done. But yes, WWE takes its second annual trip to the United Kingdom, and we are hot off the heels of Crown Jewel, going from that one country in the Arab part of the world to a country that we can actually talk about. And a lot of fallout coming from the Universal title situation that still gives me a headache when I think about it, as well as the World Cup. And setting up for Survivor Series, which is quite soon. I believe we're only 2 weeks away from it. So with that said, let's just hop right to it. So we open up with the entire Raw roster on the stage, chilling out. And we got the ring surrounded by some security. And Baron Corbin makes his way to the ring to make a few announcements. Of course, he says the security is not for him. When he's so important, he always has that kind of security. But he wants to touch on the title situation with Brock and Braun, saying that it was merely a teaching lesson for Braun, that you can't disrespect authority. You just can't, because, if you do, you get a championship belt upside your head. It's kind of like when you're getting a spanking. You take the belt to the booty, and wrestling, you take the belt to the head, I guess. Yeah, that's how it works. He also mentions that Stephanie will be back next week to address the Shane McMahon situation, which should just be a garden of delights. I say that sarcastically. And he shifts his attention over to Survivor Series, talking about the elimination tag match, of course, between Raw and SmackDown, because this is the only time of year that Raw and SmackDown compete in head-to-head competition for our next tagline of the month. Oh man, I'm tired of these taglines. But he starts assembling his team by naming Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre as the first two members, as well as Braun Strowman as another member, and then naming himself as the captain, though he will not be competing in the match. He will merely be the coach. So, just getting that out of the way, that leaves 2 spots open for the team to be determined at a later date. He then shifts to the ladies team, saying that he's found a captain for that too, and it's one Alexa Bliss, to no surprise. Alexa is, I guess, still hurt. I'm not exactly what she's injured with, but she's injured with something. But she kind of reiterates the same thing, that she is the coach, but she will not be competing in the match. She's also sporting a very attractive look. Kind of got her hair up in a bun, kind of going for like a managerial kind of look. But it works very well for her. And she kind of yells at the women, saying that they are not going to lose to the B show on her watch. And just being all Alexa Bliss about it, just being a big old jerk. She also tries to make a match for the first to kick off the show, but a rematch from Evolution between the Riot Squad and Natalya, Bayley, and Sasha Banks. Unfortunately, before she can hammer the gavel on that, so to speak, Kurt Angle interrupts and comes out to challenge Corbin, saying that if Corbin was a real warrior, a real coach, he would he would wrestle. So he says that, how about you and I have a match tonight, and the winner gets to be the Survivor Series captain. How's that sound? Calls Corbin basically a coward, and Corbin eventually accepts. Angle leaves, and Alexa again tries to make the 6-woman tag, but then this time Braun Strowman interrupts, and he just walks right through everybody. Security tries to stop him. He straight up Spartan kicks one of them pretty damn hard, and then just eats the other 4 or 5 of them alive, as you would expect. Corbin bails in this confusion, and then Braun rather makes his way back up the ramp, but the roster, mainly the heels, try to stop him. They can't because he's Braun Strowman. And Braun breaks through and heads to the back, where we see him kind of on his search. So, kind of a familiar story here. It's Braun Strowman once again hunting down a target. We've kind of seen him do this with Kevin Owens earlier this year, so we're kind of doing it again with Baron Corbin. So there it is. But yeah, just kind of just kind of a opening segment that kind of dragged a bit, but at least, and kind of rushed to set the table for Survivor Series, because that is pretty soon. So we then go to we see the Riot, or not the Riot Squad, but we see Natalya, Sasha Banks, and Bayley being interviewed after the break, and Charlie, I believe it was Charlie, or the other interviewer later, whose name I still can't remember for some reason, but you know the one, right? She's just kind of asking about their upcoming match, and Natalya breaks out Jim Neidhart, her father's, old sunglasses, saying that she's going to wear them to the ring tonight and dedicate the match to him, which is cute, if not a bit random. I'm not saying that she can't do that, but just kind of like, okay. I mean, I'm trying to think of the timing, like he's been deceased for several weeks now, and he's not British. So, cool, but I was just like, oh, okay. But it would make sense, soon enough. We have our match. Again, this is a rematch from Evolution. Natalya goes for an early sharpshooter on Ruby. It does not work. And this is a pretty standard 6-woman tag, like nothing you wouldn't expect from these 6. Not bad, nothing mind-blowing either. At one point, though, the commentators described Liv Morgan as one of the most improved superstars on the roster, which I actually agree with, because I said this, I think, the last time I talked about Liv, saying that she's gotten very good at playing her role, like playing the kind of crazy, almost Harley Quinn-esque wild child of the group. Like, she's very much embraced that, and she gets better at it every week. And her ring work, while still nothing spectacular, is a lot better than it was in NXT. Because I remember watching her in NXT when she was nothing more than basically the diet New Jersey version of Carmella, pretty much. Like, literally just basically Carmella, but from Jersey instead of Staten Island. And was really nothing to write home about down there. So to see her come up, she's kind of in that camp of like that Elias is in, of like the rare NXT star that's actually done better on the main roster than they did in NXT. So yeah, I agree with that assessment. Liv Morgan, keep up the good work. But yeah, in a cool but kind of weird finish, Natalya locks on the sharpshooter on Liv Morgan, and seemingly the good guys have it in the bag, but then Ruby pops up outside the ring with Jim Neidhart's sunglasses and in front of Natalya, threatening to break them. Natalya breaks the hold, or is kind of watching this, completely transfixed. And then Ruby teases it for a while, and then she snaps him in two like a true villain. And the crowd actually gets pretty quiet for this, and I don't know if it was genuine, like, oh, like, that's messed up, or like, indifference. I like to think that it was more like, oh, that's messed up, because it did, the kind of silence did play into what was supposed to be like an emotional thing, because she breaks the glasses. Ruby's got a big smile on her face. The commentators are saying how awful it is, which in reality, that is pretty awful to do. And then Natalya cries a lot, and the Riot Squad just kind of leaves, and the match just kind of ends. Like, there's no count out. Because at this point, all the other women are on the floor except for Natalya and Liv, so they're the legal women. But yeah, the Riot Squad all just leave, and the crowd is actually doing the counting for them, for the ref, because they kind of realize the same thing of like, so like, did the Riot Squad just forfeit? I would imagine, because they're the ones that walked out, so like the good girls won. But it was a very weird kind of way. I don't know why they didn't just like why the ref didn't just count them out, or whatever, because it's like, well, who won this? But yeah, Natalya cries for a while, holding the pieces of her father's sunglasses as Bayley, and Sasha try to comfort her. I don't know where this is gonna go. I mean, it's a good heel move. I'm sure WWE is probably gonna get flack for exploiting, or at least some people might say, like, oh, they're exploiting a death. Like, oh, now they're exploiting another tragic thing. Like, they've been doing it with Roman, now they're doing it with this, which, I mean, I can't imagine it would do this without Natalia's permission or blessing, whatever you want to call it. But it does come off as a little bit random. I mean, we'll see. I'm assuming they're setting up some sort of story, and I'm always a fan of like big stories, especially in the women's division, that don't revolve around the championship. Like, because a lot of times, if you're not in the women's title hunt, you're doing nothing, like nothing whatsoever. So I hope this is a start of like some sort of like substantial personal feud between Ruby and Natalya, just to give those two a non-title thing to do. So that would be cool. But yeah, that was an unexpected direction, but I am intrigued to see where it goes. Let's see, Braun Strowman is still on his hunt for Baron Corbin. He breaks into a bathroom. It's very much like playing GoldenEye in the facility level, and you're trying to find your friend who's always hiding in the stalls and kicking down all the doors so you can shoot him with the golden gun or something. But he does not find Corbin in the bathroom. He did not check the vent that's always above the toilet where you would normally drop in, so that was his first mistake. But no luck for him at this point. We get a recap of DX beating the Brothers of Destruction. Everyone, Cole saying it was one of the best matches ever. I wouldn't go that far. It was not a great match, but it was. I've seen some people really shit on it, and while it was definitely no masterpiece, I still stand by that it was as good as that match was going to be, probably. So nothing to write home about, but I don't think it was a complete disaster. Though Triple H was confirmed to have torn his pectoral muscle during the match, which I did not realize watching, and nobody did, because it's not like it was called out. So that was why he was absent for a lot of that match, and he's going to have surgery, it sounds like. So, I mean, it's not really much of a loss, because, he's not like a regular competitor, so it's not like, we're like, oh man, what are we going to do without Triple H in the ring? It's like, it's fine, but that explains a lot of that match, especially towards the second half, because I would imagine they had to call a lot of whatever that match was supposed to be, had to kind of get changed and called on the fly. So that, you gotta kind of cut them some slack for that, given the circumstances. Man, that's 2 times now that Triple H has been injured in a DX tag match, because remember when he tore his second quad, when him and Sean took on Rated RKO back at New Year's Revolution 2007. Yes, I am that big of a nerd to remember the exact show and date. But yeah, man, just bad luck for Triple H. He's always tearing muscles and off the bone and stuff like that. So get well soon, Trips. Next up, we got Jinder Mahal taking on Apollo Crews. And this is the latest in Apollo trying to get noticed. He cuts a little promo, or like has the inset promo during his entrance, saying that everyone keeps saying he has potential, but he's ready to finally realize it. This match is nothing special because it's Jinder Mahal. But Apollo picks the win. Finally, he hits that press into a standing backflip, which is very impressive. And gets the win. So Apollo has beaten a former WWE champion. So, I mean, it's still Jinder Mahal, but it's a good start. You gotta win matches, start getting somewhere, so cool, I guess. Seth Rollins makes his way to the ring, and he finally has the tag titles that have been completely kind of forgotten about. But he comes out with both sets of tag belts around his neck, of course, along with the Intercontinental Champion, so he is just covered in gold, or belts, I guess, because the tag titles are silver or platinum or whatever color they're supposed to be. And he talks about first how Corbin screwing over Braun and basically handing Brock the Universal Championship is BS, and it's a slap in the face to Roman, as well as him and everyone in the locker room, as well as all the fans in the arena. So he just wanted to, and he would tell Brock that to his face, but of course he's not here tonight. He then shifts his attention to Dean Ambrose, saying that he couldn't believe that Dean would not even have the balls to come out and face him to, or at least get face to face to explain his betrayal. But he figures that he's not going to be able to defend these tag titles on his own because he's just one man. And so he goes to vacate them, but Baron Corbin pops on the screen in a noticeably undisclosed location with some guards barricading the door to wherever he is. And he's like, "Oh no, Seth, you sell yourself short. I'm sure you could totally defend those belts by yourself. So you're gonna have a tag title defense right now against these guys." And these guys turn out to be these very big guys because they are the Authors of Pain, the AOP. So the AOP finally getting their Raw Tag Team title match. Definitely not in the way I expected it to come. And it's a handicap match, so that's our next match. And this match, a lot of it is Seth getting destroyed, as it should be. Seth tries to fight back, and he actually gets a relatively sustained flurry for a bit, just kind of outmaneuvering both of them, kind of using his speed. Maybe it went on a little bit longer than I would have liked, just because there's a little bit of a stretch. But the Authors eventually turn it back around, and they hit their kind of sit-down powerbomb neckbreaker combo to get the win and the title. So the Authors of Pain are finally the Raw Tag Team Champions, and it didn't feel as big a deal as it should have. I mean, maybe because it was a handicap match, so, even the announcers say, like, oh, that should probably have an asterisk next to it, because, like, they were more or less handed the titles on a silver platter, because how could Seth beat both of them on his own? But, yeah, AOP are the tag champs, and I have no idea who even approaches them to take them away, because I've said this many times, there are no credible face tag teams on Raw, like, none. Like, now that Dean and Seth are broken up and they weren't together all that long, or at least reunited all that long to begin with, like, Hardy and Wyatt have been done, and the B team were never serious champions or challengers. So it's like the Revival, who are heels, and they're the Revival are the most credible tag team that's not the AOP, and they're all heels. So, man, if only Raw had a pair of Samoan twins that might be cousins to Roman Reigns, who aren't doing a ton on that show that they're already on, man, that would remedy some things. Otherwise, I guess we'll wait for Chad Gable and Bobby Roode, because they're the only face tag team of note right now. So, I guess look for AOP to hold those titles as long as Brock Lesnar, at least from the state of the division right now. But, as the AOP leave and Seth is a crumpled heap of a man in the ring, Dean Ambrose comes through the crowd, and he gets in the ring and he's got a mic, and he's asked Seth if he wants to know why he betrayed him. And Seth is starting to stir a bit here, and he's just looking up at Dean, asking why. And Dean doesn't give us an answer. He just kind of, or instead, he responds in the form of another dirty deeds to Seth. And then Dean just walks out. And as he's leaving, we finally get what I've been waiting for, or at least, is that Michael Cole finally just asking Renee Young, like, hey, you're married to this guy, right? What's going on with Dean? Do you know? Has he told you why he's done this? I was like, why has that not been asked? I don't know. But he finally asked Renee. And Renee just says that she has no idea either, that she's tried to talk to him about it, and he is not sharing anything, so she's as in the dark as the rest of us, which is kind of a disappointing answer. I mean, I wasn't expecting her to give, like, the big reason, like, oh yeah, we had dinner, and, we had our Blue Apron, and we were just cooking up some pho, and he very romantically explained that he hates Seth's guts, and screw Roman Reigns, or something like that, just over dinner, over candlelight. He just shared that with me, so that's what happened. No, it wasn't going to be that, but yeah, at least they finally addressed that, because that was always bugging me of like, you have the perfect person right next to you that might be able to give you an answer. So the plot thickens, I guess, somewhat, or we're still where we were before a little bit. Let's see, we get a recap of Becky's promo on SmackDown with her calling out Ronda Rousey. We then see Baron Corbin getting interviewed, and he claims that he is not running away from Braun Strowman. Charlie Caruso, who's interviewing him, asks, well, if that's the case, why are you hiding in a storage room right now? And a kind of great moment, Baron just kind of looks at her and just like, you just told where I was on live TV. And then immediately after this, Braun somehow finds them. So either he is like watching the show on like his phone, or it was just coincidence that as his location was revealed, Braun found it anyway in that exact moment. So whichever one seems less logical, we'll go with that, or less unlikely. But yeah, Braun breaks in. Corbin barely escapes again as Braun beats up the security that's in there and continues his chase. Dolph Ziggler comes out, and he is all sorts of upset. He's so upset that he's decided to cosplay as Bandit Keith from Yu-Gi-Oh! With his American flag headband. And he is talking about how in America, he was supposed to be the best in the world, but Shane McMahon swooped in and stole the trophy in a move that made 0 sense, which, as much as I give Dolph shit, he is absolutely right. It really does not make any sense that Shane pulled what he did. He claims this is a conspiracy against him. Like, every time he's about to kind of break through the glass ceiling, something always happens. As Dolph continues to complain and point fingers, Elias, of all people, interrupt. And he calls Dolph a loser and says that he was hanging out with Liam and Noel Gallagher, of course, of Oasis fame, which I was not aware that Oasis had broken up. And I've never really been an Oasis fan. I've heard some of their songs are fine. I've just never really gotten into them. But I didn't know they broke up. And have they broken up for long? Maybe I'm just uncool, and I'm also not British. But he says that, hey, I was talking to those guys, and we decided to help write a song about you, Dolph, and they told me that if I play it, that it could help them reunite or something like that. Dolph is trying to make fun of Elias. It fails miserably because Elias is a better trash talker. And Elias proceeds to play his song, ripping on Dolph, until Dolph gets tired of it and challenges him to a match right now. Elias says that he thought he would never ask, and we get our next match. But before that match, we see the Revival, and they have a little selfie promo saying that tag team wrestling is not a joke, and kind of calling out the Lucha House Party, which I guess now maybe the Lucha House Party are they going to be a mainstay tag team on Raw, or a tag faction, because there's 3 of them. I guess they're going to do like Freebird, like the New Day. They're on 205 Live. Of course, the Lucha House Party is Kalisto, Gran Metalik, and Lince Dorado, who debuted on Raw last week and beat the Revival. So we'll probably get a rematch to that next week. And I mean, I guess I kind of forgot about them because I didn't think, when I was talking about tag teams, I didn't think that they would be a permanent fixture on Raw. I thought it was just kind of a one-off thing, but it sounds like they'll be around a bit. So the division, like I said, certainly needs a hot face team right now because it is sorely lacking. So now, Elias takes on Dolph Ziggler, and this match just kept going and going and going. It was not particularly engaging. One, because Elias is, the appeal of Elias is all the character work. In the ring, he's fine, but he's not flashy. He doesn't do anything remotely all that special, but he's totally solid in the ring. But his style suits a heel because it's not flashy, so it lets in any like face opponent he has look better. So I mean, it's only the second or third week of him being a babyface, so he can, kind of has time to change that. But yeah, like it was hard to get into him, just his offense. And then Dolph Ziggler kind of wrestles the same match and has for many years now. And enjoying a Dolph Ziggler match is very dependent on who he's facing. It's kind of like watching a Triple H match, actually, at least to me. Whereas Dolph is, as much as a lot of fans say that he's one of the best on the roster, one of the best performers, and I'm not saying he's bad, he certainly is good, but it always amazes me that I can barely think of very many Dolph Ziggler matches that stand out, like, oh, that's a classic Ziggler match, or like the standout Dolph Ziggler performance. Like, they really do all bleed together, and they're kind of all, for like 95-98% of them sit in that camp of like, oh, that was good, but like you forget about it as soon as it's over, like, oh, that was a good match, and then that's it. The only Ziggler matches that ever come to mind for me that stand out as something I would go out of my way to watch, or is the bragging rights match against Daniel Bryan, the opener, bragging rights 2010, when Bryan was US champ and Dolph was IC champ, which a lot of people don't talk about. But I remember watching that live and thinking like that was really good. And I'm kind of amazed that that's one of the matches that stand out, because it was kind of a one-off nothing thing, but it was just it's one of the matches that I always think of when I think of Dolph Ziggler, and I really don't know why. But it was a good match. That, of course, his WrestleMania or his post-WrestleMania Money in the Bank cash-in, but that wasn't really a match. That was more of a moment, because it was literally just him hitting one move and winning the title. So that probably doesn't count. But in terms of other matches, like his Survivor Series 2014, when he was the final, like his come from behind performance when it was Team Cena against the Authority, and then Sting debuted at the end to help Ziggler win, like that's another standout. And then after that, it's probably the ladder match, the next month of that same year, TLC 2014, when he fought Luke Harper for the IC title. I remember being really into that match. But yeah, other than those three, like the stuff he's done with Rollins this year has been good, but I mean, I have to wait a little longer to see if it's something I even remember. But those are the three Ziggler matches that I always think of. And then everything else, like he I don't know what it is about Dolph. I don't know if it's his style or his look or his just his general presentation, but I just can't get into him the way that a lot of people do. And and this is me recognizing that he's a totally fine wrestler, but he's there's something about him that's missing, that like someone like an AJ Styles or a Seth Rollins or Shawn Michaels, since he really wants to be Shawn Michaels, has with their matches that suck me into them. Like, I don't know, maybe Dolph's storytelling isn't as great as maybe others think, with those very few exceptions. But yeah, that was just my random rant about Dolph Ziggler, because there's nothing to say about Dolph versus Elias other than that Elias won, and the match went on way too long and was kind of boring. So, next up, we get a Kurt Angle. He's being interviewed, and he's fired up to take on Baron Corbin because he wants to be the captain of the Raw Survivor Series team, for the men at least. This brings out Ronda Rousey to address Becky Lynch's, I guess her punk card, so to speak, that she threw down on SmackDown. And she says that Becky threatening to rip her arm off was cute. It was very cute. And she goes on to praise Becky for a bit, saying that, oh, I can see why you're popular. You got this new attitude. It's great stuff. And and says that Becky has her respect, but to not mistake that respect for weakness, and that the last thing Becky wants to do is to provoke her. And Ronda goes on for a while, and it's kind of clear, like, Ronda's still a little bit hit or miss on her promos, at least to me, where you can kind of tell, like, you can literally tell the parts where she's kind of just talking and just freestyling, and then when she's, like, remembering a script, like, you can, like, at least me, I can tell when the switch is like, okay, she's just talking here, and then like, okay, now she's reading a line. And the part where she seemed like she was reading a line was when she kind of goes into like, I'm a natural born killer and stuff like that. Like, just the wording doesn't seem like her totally. But yeah, she says she's a natural born killer, and that she's wants to be the best athlete ever, and kind of rips on Becky a bit, saying that when Becky was in clown school and being a stewardess on an airplane, which is true stuff, Becky did do all those things. Ronda was competing in the Olympics and dominating the UFC, and that Becky might be the man. She might describe herself as the man, but Ronda is the baddest bitch on the planet. So that promo was a little bit shaky at parts, but it ended on a relatively strong note. Nia Jax then interrupts, and she basically comes in the ring and just tells Ronda, reminding her that, hey, after you're done killing Becky, I got next. Like, she puts her quarter down on the arcade cabinet and tells Ronda, like, you and me, I got next. Let's go. So yeah, just kind of lightly progressing that little match. And this leads to Ember Moon coming out because she's got a rematch with Nia Jax. Again, this match is nothing to write home about. It was kind of what you'd seen before between these two. But Ember loses again, this time to a Samoan drop. And I'm not sure why Ember is is getting beat like this. I mean, I get the idea of having Nia win because she's the number one contender, so she should look strong, but like, can you throw like Dana Brooke out there and just have Nia kill her or someone worthless? Like, Ember could be a huge star in the division, so seeing her just kind of eat losses like this and kind of feel like an afterthought is not good, at least in my opinion. And it gets worse because after the match, Tamina again comes out, and her and Nia have their little stare down. That's supposed to be a big deal, even though it's not, because Nia is infinitely more accomplished than Tamina has ever been, so it's rather uneven. They both kind of look at Ember, who's still dead on the ground in between them, and then Tamina lifts her up into a Samoan drop position, and Nia shows that she is a terrible friend because she does not try to stop this, and then hits the Samoan drop. And of course, even Michael Cole is saying like, well, isn't Ember like her friend? Like, geez, Nia. Thankfully, this is explained because Tamina then puts Ember in a Boston Crab, and then Nia turns heel and starts dropping elbows on Ember as she's locked in the crab. So, and then the two of them hug, and Nia screams a lot. So it seems that we now have an alliance, a Samoan alliance between Tamina and Nia, the two most powerful women on the roster, teaming up. How can Ronda Rousey compete against such a combined force? So, I mean, Tamina has never ever interested me. Nia is hit or miss for me. It just depends on, it's mainly her promos more than anything, and but also so like, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I guess it's more interesting than them being on their own. Maybe, we'll see, but it does create quite a formidable force for the division. So, it's too early to say. Let's just say, I want to see how this plays out before really giving any initial opinion, but it was somewhat surprising, though they've been teasing something like this for a while, so at least they're paying it off here. Finn Balor is being interviewed, and he is upset at Lashley abusing him last week, as well as Lio Rush taking shots at him by slapping him. Finn Balor calls Lio Rush a little runt, which, if Finn Balor is saying that you're small, then you're pretty damn small. And he says that Manchester is Balor Club. We shift to Baron Corbin, who is now in the parking lot getting ready to get into his limo, where Charlie Caruso comes up again. It's like, yo, where you going? You got a match against Kurt tonight. And then Corbin saying that, oh, he's got an important last-minute meeting. He's got to go. He can't wrestle Kurt. However, instead, Kurt will be competing in the main event against Drew McIntyre. And then, lo and behold, Braun Strowman busts through the door and tries to catch up to Corbin, but Corbin peels out of the parking lot before before Braun can give him the hands of doom, and that ends our Braun Strowman chase thing. So, yeah, that happened basically. I'm sure next week Braun will flip over his limo or something, because that's kind of where this kind of setup for Braun, that's kind of in his bread and butter, is chasing people around the back and then doing some freakish act of strength to mess up their day. So that will probably happen next week or in the coming weeks. So it's a little bit uninspired. Speaking of uninspired, we've got Finn Balor versus Bobby Lashley part 3 in this night of 1,000 rematches. Before the match, Lio Rush cuts a very long promo just hyping up Lashley and running down Manchester, and it goes on and on to the point where I was wondering if they were stretching for time, because it just kind of goes, and it stopped being interesting not long into it, and I actually zoned out during it because he really just kept going, and it was really nothing substantial. So I don't know what that was all about, but the match was the same as the last time these two guys have fought. Bobby throwing him around, Finn kind of sticking and moving. The only difference is that this time Bobby finally gets the win by hitting that like spinning Dominator big ending thing that he does. No, doesn't have a name or what you would call it. Then, in an interesting little bit, Drew McIntyre comes out immediately after Bobby wins. So Bobby and Finn and Leo are all still there. And Drew gets in the ring, and him and Bobby have a little face-off with McIntyre daring Bobby to make a move. And Bobby backs down. Him and Leo leave. And Finn is still on the ground, dying. And Drew, after Bobby leaves, actually helps Balor up for a bit, with Balor looking surprised, but then maybe just getting a little too comfortable, building up a little false sense of security, which winds up paying off in the form of a swift Claymore kick to Balor. Not sure if that's going to go anywhere, but the idea of Finn versus Drew is an idea that I can get behind. I guess since the Braun versus Drew feud has been dropped, and maybe the Bobby versus Finn feud, whatever that was going to be, if that's going to keep going at this point, or if that's done too, who knows? But anyway, this leads to the main event. Kurt Angle in his first match on Monday Night Raw in about 13 years, taking on Drew McIntyre, and if Kurt wins, he will be the new captain for the men's Survivor Series team for Raw. And this match was somehow the most interesting thing on this show, especially given that it came out of nowhere. Like, it was made like halfway through the show, or more than halfway through it. And the reason for that is that this was very much like they told a really cool story with Kurt fighting with everything he has against this new breed of competitor, like this unstoppable hybrid athlete in Drew McIntyre. And the whole match, Drew is dominating mostly. Like, Kurt's getting in his stuff when he can, but it's mostly Drew just all over Kurt. And the interesting thing is that Drew is toying with Kurt and just antagonizing him, yelling at him, insulting him, saying that, oh, is this the legendary Kurt Angle? It almost sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger there. It's like, is this the legendary Kurt Angle? And saying that he's a joke, and that he needs to retire or go home or whatever, and that he's nothing to Drew. And then Kurt getting really emotional, like he's like crying, it looked like at one point, where like Drew even offers up his leg, like he allows Kurt to try to single leg him, which Corey made a great call, saying like, wow, like Drew is offering his leg to an Olympic gold medalist, like just showing how confident Drew was and just being this cocky asshole. And Kurt trying to take advantage of this, but he just can't. Like, Drew is just too much for Kurt. And, like, it was Kurt trying to get in, like, little hope spots, like, just trying to get in little flurries, but then Drew immediately shutting it down. Kurt finally got something where he managed to get Drew to the mat when Drew was toying with him a bit too much, and Kurt managed to lock in the ankle lock, and Drew did a very good job of teasing he was tapped. Like, there was a point there where I was like, oh my god, is Drew actually going to tap? And I would have flipped my shit in a bad way if that happened. But Drew gets out of it, and then continues to just lay into Kurt, just these insults, just making Kurt feel like just emasculating Kurt, basically. And then to really rub salt in the wound, he hits an angle slam on Kurt, which looks pretty good because Drew is a very tall person, so like Kurt is just in the air, like he's like getting angle slammed by a skyscraper. And then he locks in the ankle lock on Kurt, complete with the grapevine, and Kurt Angle actually taps out to his own move, which I'm trying to remember if that's happened before, at least in WWE. I did not see all of Kurt's TNA run. I saw maybe half of it. I just, off the top of my head, I can't remember if he's ever tapped out to his own ankle lock, but even still, it was crazy, because it just came off as Drew just being overly sadistic and coming off like the biggest villain on the show, and like, you just felt sympathy for Kurt, because like the announcers kept hyping him up as Kurt being this warrior, and that he's giving it his all, but maybe he just really doesn't have it anymore, and Drew just disrespecting him and treating him like a joke and saying that he's nowhere near what he used to be, and toying with a guy that was once known as the Wrestling Machine. And then Kurt he just was overwhelmed and had to give up. He couldn't hang with Drew. And then after the match, we see like Drew just looking almost like disgusted with Kurt, and then immediately shifting to like that sinister smile of his, and then Kurt just looking just like embarrassed and just like done mentally, and like he can't believe he tapped out. And that wraps the show up. So an interesting little turn of events. Like I said, that was easily the most interesting thing that happened on this show was this last match, just for the story being told. Does Kurt find a way into the men's Survivor Series team? Is he going away for a while and this is the way to write him off? This made Drew look amazing. Like he looks like he looked like the biggest heel on the show, which he certainly should be positioned as that, because he's got world champion written all over him, and he's had since really for the last few years, even before he came back to WWE. So this is a great kind of step towards that direction of him just dismantling someone like Angle, and getting him to show off his psychology and storytelling chops, which he was certainly good, because I totally bought him when he was just screaming at Kurt and saying how he just did not respect him, basically. So I thought that was really good and engaging, and it was the saving grace on what was otherwise a very flat show, just filled with the rematches and just the kind of just retreading a lot. I mean, I imagine jet lag and other stuff played a role, because they've been, they just came from Saudi Arabia, and now they're in England. So it kind of had that kind of going through the motions feel, definitely, with the exception of the main event. But yeah, hopefully when we get back in the States next week, things can pick up a bit. But yeah, this Raw was really, really flat, and it was kind of a chore to get through at points. So thank God that at least it ended on a pretty high note. So that's it for this show. Hopefully SmackDown Live is a lot better, and I'll be back with a review of that. And in the meantime, if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at MarcusStewart7. That's the number 7. And you can find me on my personal website at marcuswritesaboutgames.wordpress.com, where I post all my video game just written content. You can also find this show on YouTube, iTunes, or Podbean. Just search for Marcus Writes About Games. You can also find my other podcast, Carving Gaming Rushmores, a list and discussion show where me and 2 rotating guests try to determine the Mount Rushmore of a particular gaming topic. If you want to hear me in a role-playing capacity for Dungeons & Dragons fan, I appear on 2 D&D podcasts. The first campaign is called We Wanted Adventurers, where I play a really zany and dumb bard. And the second is called Dragon Guard, where I play a gruff, Hulk Hogan-esque tabaxi/Catman. So you can find both of those on extralife.com, as well as SoundCloud and Libsyn. They're really, really fun, just improv, just stupid good times from just some great people just role-playing and just being dumb, basically. But they're pretty hilarious campaigns, so I highly recommend checking them out. So, until SmackDown, guys, thanks for listening, and I'll see you then.